Insidious 5 release date officially announced. Sony officially announces the Insidious 5 release date, bringing the horror franchise back to theaters 5 years after its previous installment. After a 5-year absence from the big screen, Sony has officially revealed the Insidious 5 release date. The horror franchise first kicked off in 2011 with the eponymous hit from Saw duo James Wan and Leigh Whannell, with the former directing the first 2 installments and the latter penning all 4 films and directing the third. The first 2 Insidious films centered on the Lambert family as they come under attack from supernatural forces trying to possess eldest son Lambert and his father Josh, who have the ability to astral project into a dimension dubbed the Further, while the latter 2 installments centered on Shaye's Elise Rainier in the lead up to her death in the first Insidious. Though reviews have been generally mixed across all 4 films, the Insidious franchise has been a fan favorite since its launch in 2011, with the original film having grossed over $97 million against its $1.5 million budget and helping further propel Blumhouse Productions to further popularity. Subsequent Insidious sequels proved to be even greater box office successes, grossing a combined $442 million against a combined $25 million production budget. After a few years of silence, it was confirmed that Insidious 5 was in development at the studios with Patrick Wilson and Ty Simpkins returning to star, and now audiences are getting exciting news about the horror sequel. Ahead of this week's San Diego Comic-Con, Sony has announced a slew of release date changes and additions to its calendar. One such addition includes Insidious 5, which has been slated for a July 7, 2023 release date. This puts the latest installment in the horror franchise in theaters over 5 years after Insidious, the last key hit the big screen. News of Insidious 5's release date comes a few months after Patrick Wilson confirmed that production on the horror sequel would kick off this spring. That said, with the film being set to hit theaters nearly a year from now, some are sure to wonder if production was delayed from COVID-19 related issues in Wilson's schedule working on Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It will be interesting to see whether Sony elects to hold firm to the July Insidious 5 release date, given it will place the film directly between The Flash, Indiana Jones 5 and Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, all of which are major tentpole projects with high expectations from audiences and the studios footing their bills. Given the franchise has largely been produced on small budgets from Blumhouse, Insidious 5's release date may not see it rise above its big-budget competition, but is sure to still see it turn a profit for the studio. Anticipation has been high for the horror sequel since it was confirmed that not only would Wilson and Simpkins be returning to lead the cast, but that the Aquaman star would also make his directorial debut with the film, and that Whannell had penned the story treatment centered on an older Dalton going to college and still struggling with his hauntings. While audiences await further details on the new film, they can revisit the first 2 Insidious movies streaming on Netflix now. Everything we know so far about Insidious 5, will Insidious 5 happen? If so, when will it release and what will it be about? Here's everything we expect next for the Blumhouse film. Will Insidious 5 happen? If so, when will it release and what will it be about? The Blumhouse horror franchise kicked off in 2010 with James Wan's modern horror classic, Insidious, a relative cheap production that raked in big money at the box office. In 2013, the sequel, Insidious, Chapter 2, was even more successful, while a subsequent prequel and a 4th franchise installment demonstrated that horror fans can't get enough. The Insidious franchise takes place in different timelines. The first 2 movies focus on the Lambert family, who enlist demon expert Elise Rainier, Shaye, to investigate paranormal activity within their home. Insidious' astral projection storyline carries over to the sequel, Insidious, Chapter 2, in which Josh Lambert, Patrick Wilson, spirals out of control and takes a trippy journey into the Further, where he converses with his younger self. Insidious, Chapter 3, a prequel, centers on Elise's backstory and ghostly experiences with a teenager named Quinn Brenner, Stephanie Scott, while Insidious, The Last Key goes way back to the 50s for a tale about Elise's younger years. The 4th franchise installment was directed by Adam Robital, who subsequently helmed Escape Room and its upcoming sequel, Escape Room 2. Much has changed in the world since the last Insidious film, so fans are probably curious about whether or not a new film will happen, and when it could be produced. Thanks to Blumhouse, we now have some answers about the next franchise movie, including the premise, the cast, and when it might release. Here's everything we expect for Insidious 5. Insidious 5 is happening. Insidious 5 was officially announced at Blumfest in October 2020. Patrick Wilson will make his directorial debut and reprise his franchise role. Leigh Whannell conceived the story for Insidious 5, and the screenplay was written by Scott Teems. Halloween Kills. Insidious 5 release date. A new Insidious movie has typically released every 2 or 3 years. Assuming that filming will commence on Insidious 5 in 2021, the movie will presumably release approximately 1 year later. For example, Insidious: The Last Key, the fourth movie, began filming in August 2016 and released in January 2018. A 2021 release for Insidious 5 is definitely possible if production begins in early 2021, but it's more likely to expect the horror movie to release sometime during the first half of 2022. Insidious 5 cast. Insidious 5 will star Wilson as Josh Lambert and Ty Simpkins as Dalton Lambert, both character reprisals that bring back the Lambert family. Rose Byrne will also likely return as Rainier Lambert, though she hasn't yet been confirmed. The narrative will reportedly have a collegiate premise, so Insidious 5 will presumably introduce new cast members who portray Dalton's friends and acquaintances. Expect Barbara Hershey to reprise her role as Josh's mother, and Lynn Shaye may certainly show up again as well. Insidious 5 story. Insidious 5 will take place 10 years after the events of Insidious, Chapter 2. Dalton has left home for college, and the storyline will reportedly explore the consequences of decisions made by the Lambert family, according to the star and director, Patrick Wilson. Insidious is proof that blood and gore don't make movies scarier. The Insidious films have made a big name for themselves, yet this popular horror franchise, the Insidious movies, have become one of the more popular horror franchises of the past decade. They've accomplished this with nearly a complete lack of blood and gore. Insidious marked another memorable collaboration between James Wan and Leigh Whannell that pushes the horror genre to new and unexpected places. Insidious begins as another take on the haunted house genre, but it eventually reveals a much deeper story that's actually about astral projection and demonic possession. The movie has spawned 3 sequels that greatly expand upon the characters and mythos within the greater Insidious universe. It comes as a great shock in Insidious when it turns out that the Lambert family's house isn't haunted, but it's actually their son Dalton, Ty Simpkins, who's susceptible to supernatural interference. Insidious depicts the battle for Dalton's soul in a visually creative way with the introduction of the Further, an astral realm that's full of terrifying demons. This leads to many of the big scares from the franchise, which all find ways to rattle the audience without the use of blood and gore. While a strange approach for a horror movie, Insidious proves how it can be done well without sacrificing scares. James Wan and Leigh Whannell first made names for themselves as horror filmmakers with the ultra-violent Saw. The movie's graphic nature led some to be hesitant to work with Wan or thought he'd be unable to create horror without these tools. Insidious is largely constructed as a response to this. This is the primary reason why the movie instead prioritizes psychological horror, aggressive jump scares, and the advent of the Further, which assaults the audience with both demons and surreal visuals. The first Insidious also centers around a young child in danger, and creates a lot of horror from the inherent tension of a defenseless youth that's frightened for their life. That in itself can create more anxiety than a bloody massacre. The only blood that actually appears in Insidious is via a bloody demonic handprint that appears on a wall. It's an evocative image, but no blood actually spills from any of the movie's victims. The Insidious sequels stay faithful to this principle and continue to focus on scares that revolve around uniquely disturbing demons and the dangers of exorcisms and possession. The final entry in the franchise, Insidious: The Last Key, shows the most blood of the lot, but it's still only in the context of minor wounds. The movies don't suddenly turn into slasher films with giant body counts. This unconventional focus in modern horror movie filmmaking would also go on to be a major guiding force during Wan's work in creating the Conjuring universe. Insidious helped prove that not only could James Wan function without excessive gore and violence, but that a whole horror movie franchise can successfully thrive that way.